Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the United States no longer exists, not because of a war, not because of an alien invasion, and not because Florida finally did something so ridiculous that everyone gave up. Instead, all 50 states have suddenly become independent countries. Congratulations, Wyoming. You're a nation now. Almost immediately, one state would probably be happier about this than everyone else: Texas. Within approximately 12 seconds, someone would have printed a new passport, raised a gigantic flag, and started referring to Texas as the Republic of Texas again. But becoming your own country involves slightly more than changing your flag. Every state would suddenly need its own government, international agreements, border controls, passports, laws, and potentially even its own currency. Imagine driving from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. Today, you just cross into Nevada. In this new America, you'd be leaving the country. Welcome to the international border between California and Nevada. Passport, please. Why are you visiting Nevada? Blackjack? Approved. But now imagine people who live in one state and work in another. Millions of Americans regularly cross state lines, and suddenly those ordinary commutes could become international travel. New York and New Jersey would have an especially awkward morning. Bridges and tunnels that currently carry commuters would technically connect two different countries. Meanwhile, Washington, D.C. would be sitting there wondering what exactly it's supposed to do now. But borders would only be the beginning, because every new country would need money. Some states might continue using the U.S. dollar through agreements, while others might decide they want their own currency. Texas could introduce the Texan dollar. California could launch something unnecessarily technological. Florida would probably issue currency with an alligator on it. And somewhere, Dave has just discovered that the $20 in his wallet may require an international currency exchange to buy lunch across the state line. Then comes trade. Modern states don't operate as isolated economies. Electricity, fuel, food, water, manufactured goods, and raw materials constantly move across state borders. California produces enormous amounts of agricultural products. Texas is an energy powerhouse. Midwestern states produce huge quantities of corn, soybeans, and livestock. Other states depend heavily on goods arriving from elsewhere. Those invisible state borders would suddenly become international trade routes. Governments would need agreements covering tariffs, trucking, pipelines, electricity grids, and water rights. And that's where things could get messy. Imagine Arizona asking California for access to something it needs. California says yes, for a price. Arizona responds with a tariff. California responds with another tariff. 3 hours later, Dave's avocado costs $40. Water could become especially important in the western states, where rivers and reservoirs already cross multiple boundaries. The Colorado River currently flows through and supplies water across several U.S. states and Mexico. Turn those states into countries, and suddenly you're negotiating international water treaties between places like Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, and California. Now let's talk military power, because this is where our 50 new countries become extremely unequal. States such as California, Texas, Florida, and New York have enormous populations and economies compared with smaller states. California alone would have an economy comparable in scale to some of the world's largest national economies. Meanwhile, Wyoming has fewer people than many American cities. Wyoming looks across the border at its neighbors and quietly closes the curtains. But what happens to the existing U.S. military? Bases, aircraft, ships, and personnel are spread across the country. Does each state inherit whatever happens to be located inside its borders? California suddenly has major naval installations. Virginia has the Pentagon. North Dakota looks around and remembers there are strategic missile facilities in the region and says, guys? Realistically, dividing federal military assets would require enormous negotiations because nobody wants 50 brand new countries arguing over who owns what. International alliances would also become hilarious. Would NATO suddenly receive dozens of membership applications? Would California and Texas become geopolitical rivals? Would neighboring states form regional alliances? You could imagine a Pacific alliance between California, Oregon, and Washington. Several northeastern states might cooperate closely because their economies and infrastructure are already deeply connected. The Great Plains states might create agricultural and trade agreements. And Texas has already printed another flag. Sports would become completely insane. Forget Team USA at the Olympics. Imagine 50 separate national teams: California versus Texas basketball, Florida versus Georgia football, Alaska entering the Winter Olympics like it's been preparing for this moment its entire life. The medal table would be absolute chaos. Then there are the states that might actually do pretty well independently. California has technology, agriculture, entertainment, major ports, and an enormous economy. Texas has energy, industry, agriculture, and major cities. New York has global finance and commerce. Florida has tourism, ports, and a huge population. But even these powerful states would lose something incredibly valuable: easy access to one gigantic domestic market. Right now, goods, workers, and money can move between states with relatively few barriers. Breaking that system into 50 sovereign countries could introduce enormous amounts of bureaucracy and economic disruption, and smaller states wouldn't necessarily be doomed either. They could specialize, cooperate with neighbors, and form economic unions, which raises an interesting possibility. After several years of border checkpoints, trade negotiations, currency headaches, and Dave needing 3 passports just to visit his relatives, the 50 countries might decide that constantly cooperating is easier than constantly negotiating. So they create agreements allowing people and goods to move freely. Then they coordinate defense. Then they create common economic rules. Eventually, someone suggests creating one large political union to make everything easier. Everyone looks around the room. Texas slowly lowers its new flag, and congratulations. After spending years breaking the United States apart, they may have accidentally started rebuilding something that looks suspiciously like the United States. So which state would actually do best as its own country? California, Texas, New York, Florida? Or are we massively underestimating Wyoming? Tell me in the comments, because whichever state gets the most votes, we're putting Dave there next.